Good morning. This is Mission Alive, and I'm Brother Greg McCann. We're introducing now part 2 of the MSc involvement in China. Last week I talked about the time when I first arrived, and so today I'd like to continue talking to you about my wonderful experience and about the beautiful place and the beautiful people that is China. I enjoyed the times in Fuzhou very, very much. They often say that your heart is in the first place that you get sent to. And teaching at Fuzhou was a real pleasure. The teachers would go together every morning on the bus. You can see them up there. There's yours truly. And there are some of the teachers in the bus. And sometimes we'd go and we'd be introduced and asked to judge a speaking competition, an English speaking competition. And there would be 4 or 5 judges, some Chinese and some foreigners. We used to do that a lot. That was a big thing. Sister Rentoul, a Brown Josephite nun, who was also the ITESH representative in Australia. Do you remember I mentioned ITESH, the Association of International Teaching and Exchange Curriculum? She came and stayed with me for a while and visited me. And we had a lovely time. That class she's in there is the graduating class. And of course down here is the classroom. And they always tried to put some sort of words of wisdom on their board in the classroom. And of course one of the most common was no pain, no gain. The students were absolutely wonderful people, and I really, really enjoyed my time. So my apartment at Fuzhou was on the banks of the Mingjiang River, and the Mingjiang flooded in the year 2000 after I'd been there for a couple of years. You can see the man just outside my apartment riding. He's actually riding on the road, but you would be amazed how strong that current was. Trying to walk against it was really, really difficult. And I had a bicycle called my Shanghai Tank. It was an old bicycle. One of the big problems in those days, of course, was everyone was on bicycles. There were very few cars. You would only see the occasional government car. But everyone had bicycles, but of course they kept getting stolen all the time. There were bikes being stolen left, right and centre. But my bike was never stolen because my students used to say, nobody will take your Shanghai Tank. It's too heavy, too old and too battered. But I enjoyed that bike and it was very good to me. I used to be able to put my week's supply of food and goods in the tray on the front and in my backpack, and when I was doing my shopping. It was called a wonderful time, and of course I was a lot younger then than I am now. That's another classroom there. They were what they called they weren't freshmen, they were sophomores. They were the sophomores, that's right, second years. So okay, there we have. Up here are some of the students that we used for the concert. We put on a concert, and it was called, I think it was called Cinderella. Anyway, it was a make-up, a Chinese idea of Cinderella. It went really, really well, and the students were just great. They loved it, and we had some real fun. learning our English and putting it on for the whole of the campus. It went over very well. Just an example of the kind of fun and wonderful, enjoyable time that I was having. During this time in China, the growth was extraordinary. After the 5-year plan, the first 5-year plan, the second 5-year plan was infrastructure. Just let me explain for you a minute just what's happening. Zhu Rongji was the Prime Minister, and he had a plan. He said there are 3 things that are necessary to develop China. The first one is infrastructure, and the second one is infrastructure, and the third one is infrastructure. And that's what he did. So that there were so many roads and railway lines and airports built after the year 2000. So the first 5-year plan went from 95 to 2000. Fuzhou was starting to be developed after 1999, as I said, because it was the last place to be developed as punishment for keeping for keeping Chiang Kai-shek. So now Fuzhou was starting to become developed, and it was just an example here you can see of some of the things that they did. I took these photos in 2003, so I took them, most of these, from the bus going to school going to university of a morning. You can see that picture, and the bus was terrible. So nobody worried about the road at this stage because they were fixing up the roads, and that's the same photo some months later. There's another one. See, that's a bridge being built. That's a bridge being built. There's that little house there. There's the bridge finished, and there's that little house again. The whole place. There's the bridge, there's the house, there's the bridge, and there's the house. Extraordinary. And this one here is this building here is this building here. It's really changed, and that was, you could see it happening. It was extraordinary. There were things that were going on, and I'll just say I was extremely blessed to be there during these exciting times, and I never ceased to wonder at the patience and the tolerance of the people who were being constantly inconvenienced, me included. It was awful going to campus in the bus. The bus trip to campus was normally about 20 minutes or so, and it was during those days it was terrible. We used to have terrible times, but it was all a part of development, and this development was to continue in Fuzhou for quite some time. So also, while I'm in Fuzhou, I'd like to just mention to you about the organising of the twin cities of Fuzhou and Nowra. One day I went into the Mayor of Nowra's office when I was on holidays. Mayor Greg Watson was there, and I said, would you be interested in twinning with Fuzhou? And he jumped at the idea and really took it on board. It was wonderful. You can see the organising of the two cities. You can see the delegation from Shoalhaven, banner made for them by the local people, the local government, and then another photograph of the delegation with Greg Watson and his wife Robin, and then they used banquets one after the other. That's the lady in charge of she's actually the secretary to the Communist Party, this one here, Miss Wang, and she put on lots and lots of banquets and organised hotels and staying accommodation and things like that for the delegation. They did a lot of good work at that time. And the other thing was while we had two delegations from Nowra to Fuzhou. Fuzhou had one delegation to go to Nowra, but after a few years the whole thing petered out a little bit, mainly because of the change of government both in Nowra and the change of government in Fuzhou. But nevertheless, it was a good start to a city like Fuzhou, which was really just starting to get on its feet. I enjoyed my formative years in Fuzhou. I was on a steep learning curve. We had fancy dress days, English corner, and the first 3 weeks of university were always used for army training. And that was really interesting. I took that photograph when I was there, and I said, I've captioned it, this photograph here is the most dangerous job in the world. We had lots of stories about my students at university when they'd started. They were all freshmen, so they'd come in, didn't know each other. They were all quite young, but they all had to go and do army training and learn to march, and they all had to fire the gun. And I can remember the students saying, "Oh, Mr. McCann, I fired the gun and I didn't hit the target." And then another student said, "Yeah, I know, you hit my target," and all sorts of things like that were happening. If you missed the target, you had to pay 10 yuan, and they give you another bullet. You've got to hit the target eventually. So that it was quite an interesting time to be there. But also, it's so important, and it wasn't difficult to keep your sense of humour. It's a funny place to live, I can tell you. It was a very, very funny place to live. And I enjoyed it immensely. It was a great part of my life, one of the most interesting parts of my life.